There has never been a time before now that allowed such a wide variety of media, films, TV shows, games, music, art to be released into the world and supported to reach a wider audience. And due to this, no time before now has ever been more celebratory when it comes to the art produced, whether it be through word of mouth, ratings, accolades, or most prestigious, awards. No matter the genre, there's always a chance for the most moving, well-made, collaborative, and powerful pieces of media to achieve their fair share of awards, even the long-neglected horror genre, with recent breakouts such as The Substance. However, this does mean that we also have a significant amount of projects that are created for the sole purpose of fame, fortune, and acknowledgement, rather than to be great pieces of art with moving messages. This isn't a new concept, of course. Go as far back as the Oscars have been a thing, and you'll find Oscarbait. Pocahontas? But sometimes it's kind of blatant. This year, there's been two examples that I've noticed, and most people seem to agree were very clearly Oscar-bait films. Now, one of these stars someone who might be a white supremacist, so I'm not watching that. And it's also really funny that it is bombing in theaters right now. And the other is The Smashing Machine, a wrestling biopic starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Now, we all know The Rock, but that means we all know the type of characters The Rock plays. Take 3 or 4 of his recent movies, and his characters are almost indistinguishable. I mean, they even wear the same outfit half the time. But this can be due to a number of things. The dialogue, writing, the vocal direction, the chemistry on set. But when it's happened enough times, you've got to realize that Dwayne isn't exactly a great actor. Which makes sense. I mean, The Rock is more of a personality than an actor. He's there to get the layman's butts in seats, kind of like Will Smith or Keanu Reeves. And I like Will Smith and Keanu Reeves. I don't like Dwayne Johnson, though. His interactions on and off set, especially with certain franchises, have very much been documented through the recent years. We all know about his no-lose rule, which is really stupid, plus the egotism that spared him trying to make Black Adam, a B-tier Shazam villain, the face of the DCU somehow.
Now what you're going to see here is why the hierarchy of power in the DC universe is about to change.
I mean, the man's best 2 roles are a voice acting gig where he didn't change his voice whatsoever, and whatever the fuck Hobbs was in the Fast movies, because he's kind of insane. Anyway, The Smashing Machine focuses on Mark Kerr, played by Dwayne Johnson, a real-life wrestler and MMA artist and 2-time UFC champion in 1997 and 1998. Hi, CEO from the future here to correct myself. Mark Kerr did not win UFC in 1997 and 1998. Both of the UFC champions he won, 14 and 15, were in 1997 in July and October. I thought it was a yearly championship, and I apologize for making that mistake. The Smashing Machine starts around this time, with Mark having already made a name for himself in the industry and enough money for a pretty respectable home he lives in with his girlfriend Dawn Staples, played by Emily Blunt. Despite this, the relationship is very rocky. Mark is all about the fighting, and because he spends long periods with his MMA friends, including fellow 2-time UFC champion and first ever heavyweight UFC champion, Mark Coleman, played by Ryan Bader, they don't have a lot of time to spend together, much to Dawn's dismay. Coleman and Kerr go way back, even if we don't see that in the movie. We are, in fact, told it, and being told rather than shown is definitely a through line with a lot of the struggles these characters are going through. Contrary to the strained relationship with his partner, though, Coleman and Kerr are tight as fuck. They're bros. Now, this is a biopic about MMA fighters and wrestlers, so there's always going to be some underlying tension beneath the covers, since they're going to have to fight each other eventually, and they're competing to beat each other. But they aren't exactly pale and mitzy. Kerr struggles to balance his home and work life because he feels like Dawn asks a lot from him, especially in times when he's prioritizing fighting and getting better. And worst of all, his substance abuse. Yeah, Kerr does a lot of heroin in this movie. And probably even more in real life at the time, I don't know. The main build-up we're working towards, though, is the big one. Pride 2000. No, not that kind of pride, sadly. Although with everyone's obsession with other buff men, you'd think there were plenty of awakenings happening inside that ring. I mean, when you think about it, wrestling can get pretty sensual. Anyway, though, this Pride is a huge MMA tournament in Japan, with wrestlers from all over the world competing, and some strong competitors defending their homeland. Mark Coleman and Mark Kerr are both dead set on winning the $200,000 prize. Now, I want to clear this up immediately. I don't know jack shit about wrestling. The most regular exposure I have to it is Dead Meat's Horror Royal Rumble they host every year, and I don't think knowing the underdog story of how Dr. Sam Loomis entered the ring at the halfway point ended up in his triumphant victory, leaving at least 6 bodies in his wake, is going to be very relevant to talking about a biopic about an actual MMA fighter. Frankly though, from what I gathered from the people in my life that actually regularly watch and know different types of wrestling and combat sport, this movie does not do its fights justice. Personally, I wasn't a fan of the repetitive moves used, the really short timer on literally every fight. You'd think they'd add some actual tension to these huge moments from Mark Kerr's life, and that they both consisted of being too slow in terms of the progression and how quickly the back and forth starts, and too fast in that almost nobody fights back in this movie. It feels like once someone is on the ground, they kind of just give up and kill into the fetal position. And look, I can relate to that, and I know they're dealing with absolutely massive units overpowering them to keep them down, but this is a weighted division, right? Everyone should be heavyweight and kind of trained to deal with that. I've watched a couple of real fights from prior 2000, and even then they had this. The grappling strategies differed from person to person, and there were plenty of moves used to break holds or keep control if it needs to be regained. There was just so much more going on in pretty much every fight, except the final, but that's a different story. And I could just see them doing so much more with how they could have presented these vital situations to the progression of the plot and characters. You can take an everyday, not necessarily mundane, but ordinary sport you can see on TV anywhere and make it into something interesting if you understand what it is trying to represent to the audience and in the story. Look at challenges. Yeah, on the surface it's just a tennis match, but it's the deeper meaning behind the tennis match. What is told to us through their actions, their past, these two former best friends going head to head in something that is a tool used to paint a picture of their lives together and why they must duel. The Smashing Machine uses really basic build-up to each fight, and mostly just has a short scene of the characters doing warm-ups beforehand, then getting into the mix. I would have liked a lot more of the quiet moments, since those are probably the best part of the movie. There's a reason most people say this is The Rock's best performance. I disagree, because I think he is trying way too hard to talk softly and present himself with emotional stability, and his character really isn't about that. I mean, he's struggling with addiction, he has mixed feelings of jealousy towards his best friend's success, he's having a bout with his girlfriend every 2 minutes, and he feels like he's losing what he's good at. He's not going to be calm. These kinds of reflections, showing and building up the anger and vitriol, allowing us to see how much it fuels Kerr for better or for worse as he gets into the ring, maybe even parallel to his opponents, who is just treating it like a standard fight, understanding that they have options, family, friends, fans. They don't need to win to keep afloat, but they try their hardest anyway. It would have added a lot more to the contrast between their mindsets throughout their careers, in my opinion. But since I already touched on his relationship with Dawn, I have to say that my least favorite parts of the Smashing Machine are whenever they're arguing, which is a lot. Because first of all, putting Emily Blunt next to The Rock is like having Steven Spielberg direct a short film that is a spin-off of an Eli Roth movie. You're gonna get ratioed. But also, none of them felt naturally progressed or even started. The characters' emotions are flip-flopping to an almost incoherent sense, and that makes it really hard to get invested. They'll be talking normally, and then Kerr just starts matter-of-factly insulting Dawn, and first off, this makes him extremely unlikable and hard to root for, which, when you're struggling to draw sympathy to the main character, you can't just excuse that by saying he's in a bad situation. It's no excuse to always push away and act like an asshole to the people who care about him and are willing to try and change when he wants. Dawn compromises and folds so many times to keep themselves cordial, and Kerr just keeps taking, and even has the audacity to say she shouldn't come to one of those fights. But she is supporting you! You're lucky you even get to see her at home after that. The key to writing good arguments is to make both sides understandable. Again, not necessarily agreeable, but I feel like they really overdid the egotism and discontent Mark Kerr had. He does not come out of this movie looking like a good guy, and I'm sure he said some bad things during his period of his life. I mean, he was on heroin and getting his ass beat. But goddamn, this is hard to watch at times. At least The Rock was perfectly cast in that sense, though. And all of this is contrast to the other MMA fighter in the room, Mark Coleman, who, from what we see, is just a good guy. He has a nice relationship with his wife, although they have split up since in real life, alongside his kids, and seems pretty respectable to his opponents. Plus, he seems to be the more memorable and recognizable fighter, at least from the people I've talked to. So is it weird for me to say I'd rather the movie focused on him? I know the original documentary titled The Smashing Machine was about Mark Kerr, but Coleman just seems like he'd make for the better protagonist, and the story would be much more entertaining and satisfying. Or hell, just have them both. Make it like a parallel brothers story and show the good and bad of each while they try and help each other at the end. But then The Rock would have had to share the spotlight. That makes sense. My own biggest critique, however, is probably the cinematography. There's a couple cool shots sprinkled in using mirrors and great framing, but as soon as I saw the fights were just filmed from a standard wrestling angle, I was really disappointed. It was the perfect opportunity to do something different. You could have had the camera in the ring, really showing the immersion, blocking out the crowd and really seeing everything from Kerr's perspective. Or giving the camera its own personality and having it act as a separate entity to the fighters, similar to what one battle after another would do. And show them pushing and throwing each other around from on to off screen, getting closer and further depending on how close the fight is to ending. honing in on the impacts and just making an actual immersive experience. There's so many cuts when they actually get to the hits and fighting that it just made me a bit sad. I would have adored to see these real wrestlers and fighters who have had cage experience before going at it in fluid one takes. The camera spiraling around them, their faces showing every decision they have to make, every feint, when to keep and slacken their grip. There's just so much wasted opportunity. Overall, though, I think The Smashing Machine was a huge miss. From overly dramatized character interactions to disappointing and poorly done fights in the movie about MMA fighting, there were missteps on every part of the board. I did enjoy some parts of the movie, but mostly when it came to the characters outside of Mark Kerr, which hopefully says more about the movie than it does about him in real life. Emily Blunt and Ryan Bader are doing great jobs, and it's just a shame they're working with The Rock. I do have some level of respect for him for trying to break his usual typecast and play a real serious role, but it could also just be his Venom symbiote taking over, telling him to actually try for once, leading to Oscarbait allegations. I think the underwhelming cinematography and handling of the fights as a whole really drags the movie down compared to others about up-and-coming talented individuals making it big in their respective fields. Challenges, Whiplash, even fucking him. Next year, director Benny Safdie's brother, Josh, is actually making a similar movie in this vein too, being Marty Supreme with Timothée Chalamet. And frankly, I don't know how to feel about this, but with the people in my inner circle hyping it up, I'll give it a fair shot. But when a movie starts to make me wish my main character was more like Andrew from Whiplash, I think there's a lot of things they've done wrong. 4 out of 10, can't wait for the sequel. And if you want to avoid getting smashed, you should subscribe. The machines are coming because of our scientific hubris, and as my good friend Vince Masuoka once said, science is one cold-hearted bitch with a 14-inch strap-on. And if that's the smashing machine we're talking about, no wonder Mark Hale left the business. Anyway, only 0.2% of my viewers are subscribed, and I'm trying to grow that while I make my silly little movie reviews online. Also, don't forget to check out my recent video on the 1993 Mario movie, since it kicks off my The Worst Video Game Adaptations Ever Made series. And I really want to continue that. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If not, that's okay. I still hope you have a wonderful day, and that I'll see you again next time. But until then, take care of yourself, and goodbye.